My name is Murat Miraca, and I'm also one of Sweden's or perhaps world's luckiest people working with Industrial Symbiosis, because over the years I had the great privilege to work with a lot of very dedicated and smart people. So whatever I'm going to tell you is actually very much the good work of them. So Industrial Symbiosis is actually nothing new to Sweden. But there is something new happening, that we have quite a lot of industrial and urban symbiosis networks that we keep uncovering with the help of our students. But one can say that these mostly represent the low-hanging fruits. So in Sweden, we are in a stage that it is time to move industrial and urban symbiosis to the next stage with facilitating the developments. And this sounds very good, and there's a lot of good reasons for doing that. But there is a reason that we don't see as much industrial symbiosis, industrial and urban symbiosis as we would like to. And that is primarily because of the fact that the developments are very complex. They have a large number of determinants. And I would like you to remember that these are all interconnected. Industrial and urban symbiosis is a process. It's governed by a diverse set of actors. And if one of these cogwheels is stuck or is refusing to turn, then the whole process can come to a standstill. On top of that, these factors come into play at different levels, some of them specific to individual organizations, companies. Some of them come at the level of specific applications or development projects. Some of them are related to regional industrial system level, the communication, connection, rules of the game, and some of them are influenced from a broader context of the institutional context. We can influence them with the right approaches, but we need to remember that these things are not easy. They take time and they require diligence. Different parties can contribute to the process in different ways, but of all these, municipalities hold a particularly important strength because they are local, because they have good connections, because they perceive to be a neutral actor, and perhaps most importantly, they are there to stay. They have a genuine stake in how the localities develop. On top of that, they have certain level of power to set the rules at the local, regional level and give direction to in where the developments should or should not go. So what I would like to end, I should also emphasize that there is no magic bullet that anybody can just use and in a very short period of time get a lot of good outcomes. There are different approaches that actually try to address different challenges. So what I will going to offer you is a smorgasbord of what we see and to which effect they come into play that we see in different municipalities. One of the things that seem to be very effective is really open up people's minds. The dominant approach is to think me, my products, my value chain. And it is quite simple. Just to inform people that there are other ways of doing things, it makes a huge difference. What is even perhaps better is to take people to areas where they can see with their own eyes how things are done, to which outcomes come out of it. And what happens quite often is that the mindset just expands. So we don't want anybody to stop thinking about their own products and value chains. Of course, these are very important, but the idea is to expand this and complement this with a new mindset of people can start thinking about us, my haves, my needs, and local potentials that I can create. And what we also learn is that the study trips are great, not only because people go and see something interesting, but it gives an opportunity to people to have interactions. So in the project that was led by our colleagues from Malmö, that led in different stages, we took our people to different places. We went to Kalundborg, of course, which hosts a very interesting network. We went to Amsterdam, but we also came to Norrköping, and it was massively effective. I mean, at least two of the key parties in Malmö explicitly said that, yes, after going and seeing what is happening in Norrköping, we actually decided to pay more attention to what we can do in our context. Building and improving relations among actors is a key influence in here, because people do not talk to each other enough about the right things. So just by creating opportunities so that people can come together and engage in dialogues that are related, they develop mutual understanding about each other's needs and haves. They develop mutual understanding of how they can create value together. And perhaps most importantly, they develop trust and they develop a willingness to work together. These things can be improved drastically with some very simple approaches. For example, in multiple places, we organize workshops and we organize breakfast meetings, which I would like to tell you a bit more about. And by the time we finished those projects, the participants talked very positively about these activities, particularly the breakfast meetings. The breakfast meetings I have in mind is slightly different than what your näringslivskontoret might be organizing quite often. Instead of just meeting in the same room or a restaurant, what we do is actually early in the morning, we just go to one of the facilities, one of the actors' activities. So they give us a short presentation about what they do, what they have done, and most importantly, what they plan to do. And they also speak a bit about what kind of challenges they face and how they think they can address these. And of course, it never hurts to have get a nice warm kanelbulle early in the morning. And then we have a plant walk around. And you will be amazed how many interesting things people discover during these events. Someone sees something and says, oh, how do you deal with that? We have a similar problem. And then they start exchanging business cards, etc. In my opinion, this is one of the cheapest and most effective ways of both improving relationships and creating knowledge about what people can do together. The next item that is quite important is to create or improve knowledge on what is possible. The breakfast meetings I mentioned earlier is one way of doing it. But more importantly, we also need to create knowledge about what would be the impacts of these possibilities, as well as what will be the challenges to realize them. And here we see three different approaches, and we have also experience with using them. One we call the outside-in approach, where we try to understand the inputs and outputs of different actors by looking from outside with the purpose of trying to see whether we can have some matches. Here, the municipalities have particular strengths because actually many of the information that we may want to have for these kind of activities is already available in the municipal organizations. Your environmental reporting system, your permitting system already holds quite a lot of information. Of course, there are concerns about the use of that information, but nobody stops you to screen those through and then you say, Ian and Johan, I think you should have a meeting and talk about something because we think there might be something there. The second approach that we call inside out is actually starts by the companies. So we sit down with the companies and we engage in a dialogue together with the people and we say, okay, what are your existing inputs and your existing partners, and can you do something different with that? And in the other extreme, we just go to, okay, what are your alternative new inputs and alternative new partners, and what are the options? And we do the same with the outputs. This tends to be a bit more influenced by companies' priorities, so perhaps it gives you a more narrower list of options. But the good thing about this is that we get a priority list where the companies are willing to act in the short run. And the third approach is what we call the middle-out approach. And this is a magical recipe that you will be amazed what you can do. Just send 2 questions to your local companies the night before to get prepared. And the questions will be, what do you need and what do you have? Bring them together in a room the next day, engage them in a dialogue. And over, we have done this, and the list of opportunities that were identified by experts or other approaches were at least doubled by these kind of approaches, so hugely effective. And some of our colleagues in different places have taken it to the next level. They have been actually using the information that is available to create some sort of a digital tool that is going to create transparency about supply and demand in the market. They have also initiated a process together with the Naturvårdsverket to actually better utilize the information that is collected in the environmental reporting system, so that actually we can use this to create opportunities for collaboration. You can think of this as the blockade of industrial resource use in a nutshell, actually. Another example, Linköping is one of the very interesting examples. There are already quite a lot of connections in place. We had a rather short project of about 14 months. We did some of these exercises of input-output assessments and workshops, and we came up with 26 additional ideas that actually could be applicable to the context. So it is not trivial, these things really work. Equally important is when we look into industrial symbiosis work, It is relatively easy. I'm not saying it is easy. It's relatively easy to identify opportunities. It is very difficult to move from idea to action. And over the years, there are a lot of examples around the world where things get stuck at that point. So as part of the project we did in Linköping, we also developed something fairly simple but fairly new, which gives direction to coordinators to systemically analyze, okay, what is in the way for these kind of developments to take place, and most importantly, who needs to be engaged in which capacity, so that we can turn more of the reds or the oranges into greens and create better conditions for industrial and urban symbiosis development. The power of visions should never be underestimated, and visions don't need to be sexy. Even a very simple vision can actually mobilize a lot of people. That's what happened in Sötenes. After the Kalundborg trip, they just sketched a simple thing at the back of a paper. Then someone smartly turned it into a digital platform, and over the years the vision just improved and created an interesting development future. But what happened is that Sötenes relentlessly communicated this, and we helped them to communicate this, everybody. And this was such an attractive development future that it actually served as a magnet. So a lot of people really want to come and be part of this interesting development. And of course, there's a lot of additional things that can be done, because most of the times when you identify opportunities, you don't have all the resources in your local context. So a big part of the work for municipalities is actually to find and integrate these actors that can bring in the missing resources. I mean, for example, the network in Linköping was not as it looks today, but thanks to the great efforts of the municipality and Ivan Treff and others, the biogas plant was set up, which actually really complemented the system and created additional resource productivity gains. The same thing can be said in Sötenes, that most of the actors were in place, but thanks to the efforts of Leif and his team, they just went out and literally identified and grabbed new entrepreneurs to come and complete the missing pieces of the system, such as the Swedish algae factory. Equally important, and municipalities are uniquely positioned to influence these things, we can call them the rules of the game in the local context. The energy plans, waste or resource plans, residential development codes, industrial land development processes seems to be tremendously effective in actually stimulating industrial and urban symbiosis developments. In Malmö, a lot has been done over the years, but some of the important developments is that industrial symbiosis was brought into the official policy elements of the city. It became a key strategy in the action plan. The new development site in the harbor is anchored on the industrial symbiosis idea, and the new master plan aims to further industrial symbiosis work, and that of course gives a lot of direction to new developments. You can say the same things about Helsingborg. Helsingborg, long time ago, decided to say residual or secondary energy is priority in the local system, and that actually really created a new drive to use all the waste that flows in a productive way. And recently, industrial symbiosis is also becoming part of the business strategy. A concrete example of that in Helsingborg is that as part of a residential development initiative, the city, together with the utility operators, just put a challenge. They said, we want to have a superior resource productivity in a development area. That really stimulated an innovation process, and that created some new solutions that will really address a very significant technical challenge, because part of the reason that we cannot create as much value from resources is that we mix them close to the source, and thereby render their productive use capabilities significantly. So what is happening in here is that the city is also influencing how the technical system develops, and in this setting, for example, higher temperature grey water is separated, thereby improving the prospects for recovering energy, or organics are separated so that better biogas can be produced. Of course, the cities can also be involved directly in operational capacity through the public controlled utility operators. Again, we see a very good example of that in Helsingborg, where both the energy utility company, the waste utility company, and the water utility company really plays a significant role in creating value from secondary resources. Particularly interesting in here is the Vera Park initiative, where the city has decided to transform itself from being a waste service provider to a waste management platform provider and opening up the system for entrepreneurs to create value on what is being collected. One of the things that I would like to emphasize is the fact that when we speak about municipalities, actually we don't speak about uniform, homogeneous entities where all the divisions point in a concerted direction. Oftentimes it's the opposite. Different municipal units often have different interests, different priorities, and pull and push in different directions. So one of the very effective things that we realize with this kind of work is to actually bring them together and make them understand how they can benefit from industrial symbiosis and how they can contribute to the developments and actually form a coherent, concerted body to actually drive these things. And the last thing that I would like to emphasize in here is what is happening in Malmö, and I think is going to start happening in Linköping as well, that the city actually formed the so-called Stadens Industrial Symbiosis function, which is represented by some of the key municipal units. So what that does is, whenever they come across a development opportunity, they approach this as a singular voice. The business development department, the planning department, the miljöförvaltningen, etc., etc. And depending on the nature of the development project, they also engage others into the process. They are the system operators, universities, whatever it is, and they systemically identify what kind of new connections can be created, these new development opportunity, and then sometimes they lead to the collaborations. And these things did pay off. I mean, in Malmö, there has been some ongoing processes for about 7 years. And at the end, new synergies have been created that really save a lot of money and resources. And perhaps more importantly, new innovations have come to the market that really opens up great markets for the people who are behind those innovations. Of course, one of the very important things that municipalities do is they secure the resources and provide continuity to a process that tends to be slow and long-term. We should never forget about that. So my last slide is when it comes to challenges, progress with these kind of things are often slow, and the progress at the initial stages is not very visible because a lot of things happen in the social sphere and you really need to know what to look for to see what is really improving. And certain factors are beyond the direct control of municipalities, of course, like what the organizations decide at the end of the day and what the policy context may look like. So I'll stop in here for now. Thank you for your attention.